Hi Titus. 11.2 circumference, chapter 11, pages 240, 241. So circumference, here's your formula. It's just pi times diameter. Pi is about 3.14. It's a number that never stops or repeats. So it's actually one of your best examples of an irrational number. Rational numbers can be written like fractions. Now they estimate and say that you can write pi 22 over 7, but that's just an estimate of pi. Pi actually can't be written like a fraction. It's 3.14159, blah, blah, blah. Never stops, never repeats. So you can't write it like a fraction, but this is the best estimate of pi as a fraction. If you want the exact answer, you just leave pi. This would just be 10 times pi. That would give you your exact answer, but otherwise you are estimating. You're not getting the exact answer. Now they give you this one, circumference is 2 pi r, but it's kind of dumb to, because 2 times the radius is just the diameter. So whenever they give you the radius, just find the diameter, just double it. If the radius is 5, the diameter is 10, and just use this formula. And then they talk about this one, and if you're trying to find the diameter, just use this formula and divide both sides by pi to get the diameter. You don't need to memorize all these different formulas. So you just need this one. Circumference is pi times diameter. Circumference is pi times diameter. All right, so anyways, here we go. To number 3, circumference is pi times diameter. So circumference is 3.14 times 10, and when you multiply by 10, you just move it 1 to the right. Attach your units. Number 6, circumference is pi times diameter. This time they want you to use the 22 over 7 as your estimate of pi. And so that, your 7's cancel. I showed this one step at a time. I could have just, I didn't want to get too, crowded. And that's 2 times 11, and that's 2 times 4. The 2's cancel. And 11 over 4 is 2 3/4. Or you could have 2.75, but since it's fractions, I'm leaving it fractions, or mixed numbers here. Number 9, circumference is pi d, circumference is 3.14 times 8. And here's my multiplication off the side. Remember, always attach your units. It's pretty friendly, hopefully. Number 12, so circumference is pi d, so 3.14 times. I call that 1.75. Since it's decimals, I might as well go decimals. And I do multiplying, blah, blah, blah. I don't like using a calculator. And 4 numbers to the right of the decimals, so you need 4 numbers to the right in the answer. And then they wanted you to round to the 100th, which means that 9 rounds up to 49, rounds up to 50. So since I round, I'm not going to drop the 0. So I'm showing that I rounded to the hundredths. I'm going to call that 5.50 feet. It's 5.5 feet if you wanted. But since you're rounding, show that you actually rounded. Number 15 is perimeter, and perimeter is of a rectangle is the easiest one is this one. Plug in your 6 and 2. So because then you only have to add, then multiply. You only have to do 2 operations. Groovy so far? I hope so. And then here, this was your first tricky one here. You're trying to find the perimeter of this thing. Well, here you got, how many sides of the square are there? Yep. There's 3 sides of the square. Then how much of the perimeter is there? And yeah, that's half a perimeter. So here's the formula I just wrote. Perimeter equals 3s plus half a circumference. So it's 3 times 6 plus half of pi d, which I could have just written, which is pi r. But anyways, So half of 6 is 3, and that's where I finally ended up doing that. 3.14 times 3 is 9.42. So anyway, so there's my answer. But you can end up kind of having tweak and writing your own formulas, okay? And then number 21, here's like classic problem solving. They're giving you more complicated stuff here. Like this was more complicated too. But here, so I'll slow down on this one here. Miss Byers is placing edging around a rectangular fish pond. Rectangular. So I drew a picture and of a rectangle, and the length is 10 and the width is 5. So I'm drawing a picture. If you can ever draw a picture, that's a great thing to do. It's 10 by 5, it's a rectangle. Oh, well, the first thing I'm going to do is find the perimeter. And so I'm using formula, find the perimeter. There's my second problem strategy. First one was I drew and labeled, and now I'm using my formula because I'm finding the perimeter. Perimeter is 30 feet. And now what do they, the edging's 450 a foot. Well, then I'm just gonna I gotta find the cost. Well, I'm gonna use proportions, which you're gonna be learning about. So I'm gonna show you. You make a circle and you obey the circle, and a proportion is when a fraction equals a fraction. So it's dollars per feet. So I'm just gonna write 4.5. No, not 4.50, but it's 4.5 dollars every 1 foot equals, I don't know, for 30 feet. And that's a proportion when a fraction equals a fraction. And then you can just look, that's times 30, so that's times 30. So then I'm like, well, I want to just do that in my head. I'm kind of sick and tired of doing this decimal multiplying because I can do this in my head. And so what I did was I went, well, that's 30 times 4.5, not 4.5 times. Anyways, so you can multiply in any order, and I'm going to break 4.5 into 4.5, and I'm going to multiply each by 30 because then I can do that in my head. That's 120 and 15. So it's 135. But that's what I was doing in my head. I rewrote it using distributive property so I could do this just in my head to get this. Anyways, we haven't seen proportions. You're going to see that in chapter 13, and it really is like one of the most important concepts is proportions, and I'm excited to teach that to you. I'm glad that that's happening. Oh, and you already saw that if you watched that video on Watch Before You Start Chapter 7 for Eric. That was proportions. But this was a word problem where you make a circle and obey the circle. So you write your own proportion. You write 4.5 over 1 equals, I don't know, over 30, and then you would weasel. This is times 30 times 30, right? So, yeah, you should know how to do this from the video, but I mean, you're just getting started, but anyways, proportion's a big deal. But I just wanted to see how I boxed it off, I drew and labeled, and then I did my formula, and then I'm finding the cost, and so it's a proportion, right? Anyways, love you, buddy.